Who's feeling hopeful today? Maybe just different areas of life. If on a scale of 1 to 10, where would your hope be? If 10's the best, maybe we should ask this question. But if the Bible has a lot to say about hope, doesn't it? And we can have small hopes and big hopes in lots of different areas. We went to, hopefully you'll see this online, we went to watch George's game yesterday. They were Dronfield versus Newark, is it? And it was pretty cold, wasn't it, Ford? we were sat there, stood there watching the game, and we were all just we're all just doing the hop, the little dance to try and keep warm. And I was thinking, I was in a heated jacket as well, and I was still cold. But there's little types of hope, They were hopeful for their game winning, and Dronfield did win very, very well. So I think the other team probably will not feel as hopeful that day. But hope, it's important, isn't it? There can be small amounts, there can be large amounts, but really, the Bible tells us we need hope. Matthew 12:21, it says this, "And his name will be the hope of the world." Some translations say that his name will be hope for the nations. But what does that mean to us? Because we know this expression, don't we, as Christians? What does that actually mean? If someone asks you, they say, okay, you're a Christian. Jesus he's many things, but he can also be known as the hope of the world. Why? What does that mean? What do you say to people? You're in the workplace, someone comes up to you, you're a Christian. You believe in all of that stuff, don't you? Because that's the kind of thing people say. Why is Jesus the hope? What does that mean? Why is it he's the hope of the world? What would you say? Silence. That's excellent. That's excellent. I wanted to just look at this today, this idea of hope. Why is the hope of the world? What that means to us in some different ways. The Bible calls him, it uses different examples. It also calls him the light in the darkness, which gives us a really good visualization of what that means. Because if you are in a dark room, light becomes so valuable to you, doesn't it? Ever been in a room that is just so pitch black you can't see anything in front of you? And then you turn a light on. It says, this is a picture of Jesus. This is a picture of God. That it's like we were dwelling in a dark room, but a light turned on. And all of a sudden provided clarity, provided vision, provided life in a place where there wasn't before. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. So, hope because God came to rescue us. We usually love this, this Christmas period, and the very act of God coming to earth, we have to look at it. It's the very nature of it was one of rescue, wasn't it? Because we can get lots of different views of God. There's lots of different theologies that exist, but the very mission, the very act, the very intention and motivation of God coming to humanity in human form, the very nature of it was one of love. The motive there was, I am going to rescue these people and make a way where there is no way. It wasn't, I'm going to come down there with a rod of iron and I'm going to teach these people what they've been doing wrong. And do you see what I'm saying? The very act of it was rescue. It wasn't from a harsh place. It was from a place of love. And I wanted to tell you this story. This is quite a well-known story of a rescue mission. But it's pretty odd. You might have heard this. But this is a guy called Harrison O'Keefe, I believe. And it was in 2013. And he was working on, I think it was a type of fishing boat or a tugboat, something like that. And they were off the coast of, I don't know where they were, to be fair, but they were off the coast. They weren't out in the middle of the ocean. They were just off the coast. So they were a reasonable way out. And what happened is that the boat that they were on capsized. So it turned upside down, which is, that's not good. That's not good, is it? And it sunk to the bottom of the ocean, which that area where they were was about 30 meters, according to the internet, which is, That's pretty reasonable, isn't it? That's quite a distance to be underwater. And bear in mind, you wouldn't really know how far down you are or not. So this guy, he was trapped in this boat, and it sunk to the bottom, and he found a little air pocket in one of the cabins, in one of the rooms. So he was alive. But I want you to just think about that for a second, okay? Because it would have been pitch black, right? Pitch black. And you've sunk to the bottom. The ship's upside down. What do you do in that situation? Panic. What do you do? How would you hold up? How would your mental resilience be in that situation? So this Harrison, he's at the bottom, and he doesn't know the situation of what's going on with anyone else. All he knows is himself. He's stuck in this room at the bottom of a boat. And it says that he was down there for 3 days. 3 days down in this place. Now, how would you keep hope in that situation? Where would the hope be? Where would it come from? The point is, I don't know about you, because hope, for me, I can fluctuate. Some days I can feel really hopeful based on what's going on. Other days, maybe not. But what we're told in this story with Harrison is he got to a point where he was just down there in the darkness, and it says that he just started reciting the Psalms to himself. He was a Christian, he was a believer, and he was just praying and worshiping in that space. And though we can look at this as an interesting story, there is something pretty inspiring about that. To picture this guy just worshiping God at the bottom of the ocean in an overturned boat, and he honestly would have had no idea whether rescue's coming or not. Maybe the first day you'd be pretty hopeful. You'd be like, okay, someone's got to know. Someone will be on the way. Maybe the second day you'd be starting to think, well, what's the holdup? Shouldn't they be here by now? Where is my rescue? Third day, you wouldn't even know the passage of time, but the third day, you've got to be thinking, this is not looking good. But finally, on the third day, it says that a rescue team managed to get in, and they did not know they were rescuing. They just thought they were, doing what needed to be done and recovering bodies. But then there's footage of this online as well. You can see when the scuba divers, they went in and they see him, and they were completely shocked to find him alive. But you can just imagine the hope in Harrison's face when rescue turned up. Because he's gone from complete, this is not looking good at all, to rescue's here. And when I was just looking at this story, I know this seems, it's a very condensed story, but to an extent, this is a great illustration. This is how God is rescuing humanity. That creation, that humanity was stuck in a place. We were stuck in a place, and only He could create that salvation, could rescue us from it. Does that make sense? Yeah? Now, this guy as well, he must just be, built kind of strong, because you would think you'd never get in the water again, maybe after that. And though he started off saying that, apparently now he is actually a diver himself. Can you believe that? So someone who'd been in that position, now they're a diver themselves. That just shows the hope that was within him. But he prayed the Psalms in the darkest place, and he begged God to rescue him. This is a picture of what God is doing for humanity. It might not look overly cheery on the face of it, but it is good news. That is why it is good news. The gospel is good news. So we pray and we believe for hope, for rescue in situations that we face day to day. That's part of it. That we believe that God is a caring God, that He is involved in the details of our life. That if something matters to you, it matters to God. We believe that. And we don't have all the answers. We sometimes don't necessarily see certain things delivered the way we would like them to. But we believe He is with us in all things. And I think the second angle to this is is a big one. Is this eternal hope, this hope over death. You know, the Bible says, John 11:25, I am the resurrection and the life. In Hebrews 2:14-15, he destroyed the one who held the power of death. And when Jesus was on the cross, he told one of the thieves next to him that today you would be with me in paradise. And a big part of our theology is the afterlife, isn't it? You know, we don't often, we might not think about it on the day-to-day. You know, when you're sat in Monday traffic, you might not be thinking, I wonder what heaven's like. Like, I wonder what that'll be like. But it is a core part. It is where a large part of that hope comes from, that hope that can't be removed, because we know that whatever happens in this life, that is not the end. And that just as a chapter of a book or a page of a book, it turns. And one day we all transition from this one to that one. And hope continues through all of that. And you know, theologians, they have a good time looking at what happened when Jesus was on the cross. Because, you know, some theologians will look at the text and they say that Jesus, he descended into the land of the dead. You know, the afterlife. Old Testament theology had this place of Sheol. It's this shadowy place, they call it. And again, some theologians say it was sort of split. You had this Abraham's side, which was, you know, kind of a nice side. You had maybe a side that was not so nice, but it was essentially all the same place, if that makes sense. This shadowy place. And some theologians, they say, look, when Jesus had done his work on the cross, he descended to this place. And whoever was there moved them from there to somewhere else. And this is where it gets really difficult, because you know what? The afterlife theology, we can't really verify it, can we, firsthand? But there's some really interesting ideas of how hope was being brought to people, to everyone before, because it was sort of changing the situation, the dynamic from here on out. What Jesus did on the cross, it just changed everything. And it's this idea that even retroactively, it was setting up something for the age to come. Does that make sense? Because when we look at Christian theology, you know, we believe that actually we don't end here, and that heaven, there is a bigger picture of it being the restored earth. Does that make sense? This place where heaven, the spiritual, overlap with the world, and it creates a restored earth where we can all dwell. Sounds kind of crazy, really, doesn't it? But the Bible is full of this incredible imagery. That is where we get our hope from. We get our hope from. Ephesians 4:9 says, he descended to the lower earthly regions, that he can change. He has power over life and death, over the very soul. You know, what is the biggest priority or concern or worry that you've got in life right now? You know, you don't need to shout it out, but we've probably all got something. What is the very biggest concern? I think maybe it comes fresh to mind. Maybe some of you are thinking that's good. You're like, what is mine? The Bible tells us, do not fear man, but put your awe, your fear, your respect into the one who has the power over life and death, over our eternal souls. Does that make sense? You know, because we love Christmas, and you know, it's an exciting one for us this year, because I think it's the first year that Jude is actually starting to kind of, you know, he's kind of getting into it. You know, previous years he doesn't really know what's going on. He's kind of into it. He's excited for the presents. There's this anticipation. There's this build up. You know, you're going through the calendar, the Advent. I mean, he wants the chocolate every day, obviously, of course he does. But it's this anticipation, this build up. And for us, as grown-ups, at some point, I guess that magic sort of wears off a little bit, doesn't it? You know, when you were a kid, can you remember how you felt about Christmas? Did you love it? Maybe? And you know, when I look back over old videos, because they used to film them every year, and I look back and I'm like, what age did some of that magic wear off for me? Because as a kid, it's just so magical. I remember going to bed on, Christmas Eve being so excited. Can you remember that? And just being so excited, so expectant for tomorrow morning, it's present time. And I was so excited for it. But now, as adults, as Christians, do we have this same excitement, the same hope for our reminder that this is when Jesus came to earth and changed the whole game, changed the rules? Or do we just go through it like, another year? Because it's difficult, isn't it? We can get into those motions, but I want us to really capture what he did for us. That it really is the greatest gift that we could have. And when we picture our mind, when we picture in our mind eternity, we can't really wrap our head around it. But I remember seeing this illustration and from a well-known preacher, and he had this rope on the stage, and he had a little bit of red tape right at the end of the rope here. And he said, I want you to imagine that this red tape right here just represents our entire life right now, okay? However many years that is, 60, 70, 80, whatever that is, that red tape represents our entire life, yeah? And I want you to imagine this rope now extends around the entire globe and comes right back to that red bit. That's a pretty long rope, right? And he's saying, look, trying to picture eternity is so inherently difficult for our human minds. But imagine if that red tape represents everything that takes place this side of the new earth, and the rest of the rope represents a slither of eternity. When you're halfway around that rope, what happens in that red tape? Even though it's very real to us at the time, and it matters so much to us at the time, when we're halfway through that eternal rope, what has happened in the red tape is probably not going to be that important. Does that make sense? In a multitude of ways, not to downplay it, but when we think of eternity, there's so much more at stake. You're thousands of years into eternity, and you say, remember when you offended me that time during red tape? It just plagues my mind. It comes back to me. I just can't get over it. You think, no, in the grand scheme of things, that forgiveness matters. That restoration matters. That walking in that joy, that peace, that love, that kindness, that stuff matters. Does that make sense? So how can we shift our mindset this Christmas going into it? Hope for the coming restored earth. It is difficult to conceptualize fully, but the Bible, it gives us some clues, some images of what it will look like, and that each person has a restored, superpowered body, so to speak. Something where mortality doesn't affect it. The Apostle Paul, he calls it the current situation we live in, the present evil age, it's the age of expiration. You just notice how everything requires work, does it not, in this age? When I was cleaning church this week, I was trying to do a bit of a cobweb clear out, because the spiders, they love this place. But what you notice is, even if you clean something, even within days, what can happen? Comes back. It comes back. Things require, in this setting, it requires constant effort. It's because this is the age of expiration. You leave some bread out, you'll see what happens to it. But the Bible, it paints a picture, an image that one day everything is set right. That illness is not an issue, that death is not an issue, that expiration is not an issue. I mean, how amazing does that sound? But living right here on earth, we just have a glimpse of that. But it is our job as Christians to try and bring this to other people. To bring it as it's a time for giving gifts, but we bring that light to give other people a chance to acknowledge it, to experience it, to see it. Does that make sense? We're going to go into communion in a moment. But who could you, if you think about this, because the carol service for us, it's not just a fun time. We hope it will be fun. But it's often a time for someone who's not come into contact with the gospel, with the message of Jesus before. And maybe it's an opportunity for someone to just hear it fresh. So I know, we're trying to be as fair as possible, but who could you invite? Is there anyone in your life that you're praying for right now where you just think, I would just love to see God move in that situation? Whether they're aware of it or not, is there anyone that you would just want to see God move? Because, again, the carol service is an opportunity to do that. That and Easter are like the 2 days in the year where we sort of have full reign to be able to talk about Jesus and God and not have people say, why are you trying to talk to me about this for? Who do you want to see impacted by God? Pray about it. Pray for that person. Send them an invite. Or better yet, just go and pick them up on the night. Let them know you're coming. But just pick them up on the night. Be the invitation. And be the conduit. Be the vessel in which that can happen. Because for us, it's not just an earthly carol service. For us, even though they might not get it or realize it, we are thinking about eternity. And a lot gets lost in that. When we are talking to people about Jesus, we're not just thinking about how they're feeling right now. You run the risk of sometimes upsetting someone because you're thinking, I genuinely believe there is more to life than what we see. I genuinely believe that. That life, that the universe, the cosmos is so complex and incredible. We understand basically nothing about it, really. And all of that exists. We can see that as far as we're aware. And I genuinely believe there is more to life than what we see. And the Bible is the Word of God that has authority, that has survived for thousands of years. Over empires, over ideologies, over good teaching. It has survived all of that and is still one of the most well-known things in the world. And I just don't believe that's an accident. I do believe that is significant. And we have our personal faith, and I believe I've had personal encounters with God, but I put my belief in what the Bible says. And I believe that in the new age, in eternity, we'll be stood shoulder to shoulder. And what we've been through in this life, though it's real and matters, we will be able to say, oh, thank goodness we got through that. And we stand together in the new age. And to me, that is a lot of what Christmas is all about. It's that bigger picture. That innocent, blameless child born in a stable. The very deity of God. Then going on to just pave a way straight through the history of time to create a way of eternity that each person's living eternal spirit and soul can be with them forever. We're going to take communion in a moment. If we can put the prayer on the screen if it's available.